Yeah.
to bring in another veteran tight end. So what do you necessarily make of that swap?
So this actually, I think, launches us into one of the big topics we're going to talk about today, which is getting the right veterans in the right places in this organization is essential to getting the Peters Quinn era off the ground correctly. And I think that Zach Ertz is the exact right kind of guy. Ertz has been around a lot of winning in his days in Philadelphia. He was there with Cliff Kingsbury in Arizona. So you have schematic know-how. You have, because like while Cliff can say, oh, we're not going to run an air raid offense, there's going to be language that he uses that other players are going to need to understand. And, you know, Ertz has familiarity with a couple of different systems at this point, kind of the West Coast Andy Reid system under Doug Peterson and some of the coaches he played for in Philadelphia, which is super relevant to that same Andy Reid verbiage that was run last year in Washington with Eric Bieniemy. So he'll be able to say like, oh yeah, you know, Doug and Andy and EB call it X, Cliff calls it Y, and he'll be able to be that translator, not just for his fellow teammates, but for Cliff. Like, hey, by the way, you might want to mention, Cliff, that they used to call this arrow and we call it this, or whatever the terminology is. So, and obviously there'll be other guys who have some carryover to different systems, guys like Anthony Lynn, et cetera, with Kyle in San Francisco, or Brian Johnson in the language that he learned in Philadelphia and the different stops that he's had along the way. So there's a lot of different coaches in the room that they can help speak to different players who have different systemic backgrounds and thus language backgrounds. But that is typically the biggest difficulty point, is like getting the language across, so Zach Ertz can help with that. But he's also a leader. He's also a guy that's going to help set the tone of how to go about it. He's a pro's pro. He's super respected. He's the right kind of guy. Like, I have heard nothing but good things in my entire NFL life about Zach Ertz. I will actually tell a quick Zach Ertz story. I met Zach Ertz one time. It was 2016. It was the NWSL semifinals. His wife at the time, or I guess at the time it was still his fiance, Julie Johnston, now Julie Ertz, U.S. Women's National Team legend, was playing for the Chicago Red Stars. And Zach came to watch the game at the Soccerplex as Chicago ultimately lost to the Spirit in a game where Allie Krieger and Crystal Dunn were awesome back in the day for the Spirit. Old school, first time they had a really good run. And I just went up to Zach and was like, hey, dude, I cover the NFL. Like, it's cool to see you out here in Germantown, Maryland on a freezing cold night to support your wife, and hope you enjoy it. And I've always been had a lot of respect for the way you go about things. He was like, dude, I really appreciate that. Thank you. Like, he couldn't have been nicer. And I know like people that know him and know the Ertz is, and they're wonderful people. So I'm excited that he is the kind of guy that Adam Peters looks at and is like, this is the model citizen that I want to bring in as a 35-year-old leader in our organization. And then, we'll see if he can still play, because when healthy, he's been productive. But at the age of 35, the health has not been there the last many years. His last really productive season was 2021, which at this point is a long time ago. Yes, we're all getting old quickly. But I think it kind of begs the question of who do you want and where do you want them within your offensive rooms, your defensive rooms? What positions do you want young guys to bring up? What positions do you want veterans as a mentor? And I think tight end is a great position for them to bring in that mentor type, because he can work with some of the O-linemen, he can work with some of the receivers, he can work with the tight ends, he'll have communication with the quarterback. It's the position on the offense that kind of touches everything else: run game, pass game, routes, protections. And Ertz is the right kind of guy to be here and be a part of that build in the way that they hoped, say, Thomas Davis would when Ron came in, to be someone who's got some familiarity with some of the coaches and can help be that voice in the locker room to help create buy-in, to say, no, I trust this guy. And by the way, I'm in Zach Ertz's case, borderline Hall of Famer. People forget because it's been a while since he's been good. But Zach Ertz was that freaking dude. He was a top 3, top 5, definitely tight end in the league. Probably had some top 2, top 1 types of seasons. I guess Gronk was still going then, but Gronk was hurt some years, and maybe Ertz was the best tight end in any given year in the league. Again, you're not bringing him in because of that. But I think this is a bigger question that we're going to tackle later on in the show with Jason Campbell at 5:30. Yep, former Washington quarterback Jason Campbell joining us at 5:30 on how the quarterback room should be built. I've thought about this a lot. I'm a big proponent of bringing in a veteran. And if that means Sam Howell's QB3 or you trade Sam Howell, like, okay, but I don't want a bunch of young dudes in the quarterback room with my number 2 pick. I want someone who can be in there that has been there, done that, seen that, and can speak to it from a player's perspective as a teammate, not just as a coach. And whether that's Tyrod Taylor, Ryan Tannehill, you bring back Jacoby Brissett if he's interested. Like, these are the kinds of players that I think you need sprinkled throughout a locker room. And this is a long-standing theory that I have had as a sports talk guy, as someone who has observed teams, is that I think you need good vets. And I think Channing Frye, now the NBA analyst, former NBA player, has the best word for this. I think you need connectors in your locker room. Channing was that on the 2016 Cleveland Cavaliers. That Cleveland Cavaliers team does not beat the Warriors, does not go on the run, does not give LeBron James the ring in Cleveland without Channing Frye. Because as the short version of the story goes, that was a completely fractured locker room. And they trade for Channing and some other guys at the deadline. And some of the other guys they traded for, like J.R. Smith, were much more important on-floor contributors. But Channing didn't know any better. So he gets there from Orlando, and he's like, these dudes, like, I want to get to know them. So he puts everybody on a group chat. And guys that didn't talk to each other all of a sudden start talking to each other. All of a sudden they're having wine nights and going out to dinner on the road. And they came together as a team because Channing Frye connected them. It's an oversimplified version of the story, but the crux of it is true. And on a roster of 53, you need those connectors. And so where do you want to see them? What positions? That's kind of what we want to talk about next. 301-230-0980 is the Team 980 listener line. 301-230-0980. You give us a call. Any free agents that you have your eye on, any position groups you're like, that would be a great position where I definitely want to see a veteran. That's what we're going to talk about next with you at 301-230-0980 on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. Like, that's where we need a veteran on the Washington Commanders. That's where we need a leader. Why the positions? Why? How do you want some of these rooms built? Obviously, we know they have a ton of draft capital, 5 picks in just basically the top 100, 3 picks in the top 40, but they also have the most free agent money in the league. And a week from today, we'll probably know how they spent some of it. Actually, we'll know how they spent a lot of it as free agency will officially open. A week from today, I actually believe at 4 o'clock as our show opens, is when that happens. Noon on Monday is when the legal tampering period opens. Full coverage, of course, all day on the Team 980 next week. But at 301-230-0980, whether it's guys you want to bring back, guys you want to bring in, who are the vets that you want to see in D.C. next season on the heels of the Commanders signing before free agency officially opens, Zach Ertz, because he was a free agent coming out of last year. They can do that deal now. Reunited with Cliff Kingsbury in D.C. Let's go to Paul. Paul, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
All right. How's it going, man? Nice. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
I like. First of all, I like the sign of Ertz because I knew we weren't going to go back with Logan. But the other thing is that instead of a particular individual, whether you're a leader or veteran or not, I want a good ball player that's on that offensive line, man. We need some help in there, and that daggone linebackers room, man, it's always been horrible. Those two rooms right there has been a problem for me throughout the years. That offensive line and that linebacker room. So just tell me what you think about that, man.
Yeah, Paul, I think those are 2 great spots. I do think you need vets in the O-line room, and I think a team like the Eagles over the years shows you the power of that. Like, the trenches are the core of your team. You know, it's inside out, and that's not just from a play standpoint. That's from, like, an attitude and everything standpoint. When you have a young O-line like Washington's had since, like, Trent and Laval and Sheriff and all those guys left, and Sheriff obviously was young when he was here, like, I think that has a trickle-down impact versus those tone setters or vets that everyone respects. I don't want to say fears, but like fears letting down. And ironically, I think one of the names that started to bubble up over the last couple of days is Sheriff himself. Would you be open to bringing back Brandon Sheriff? I don't know what you do with Cosme then. Do you kick him back outside? Do you kick him over to left guard? Because Sheriff is obviously your right guard. I don't know that makes a ton of sense there. Unless you're comfortable kicking Cosme over, which I would consider for sure. But like a 32-year-old Brandon Sheriff, who's Jacksonville now needs to move on from for cap reasons, yeah, I'd be interested in bringing him back on like a 2-year, very high number deal. Because you have the flexibility cap-wise to do that. I'm not like looking to commit super long-term money to him. But at 32 years old, if I can tell Brandon Sheriff, I'll pay you $20 million a year for 2 years. I know that sounds crazy, but like if he's going to be an all-pro, like shoot, done. Do it. I don't know that gets it done. I actually think that might not be enough for a guy like Brandon Sheriff with where the cap is now. But those are the kinds of things that I'd be thinking about outside the box as like a tone setter leader for your team. And I'll tell you what, if your guards are Sheriff and Cosme, no one's going to want to play you. Like that is an amount of nasty on your offensive line that defines who you are as a football team. In a way, that's fantastic. Let's go to Lap. Lap, you're up here on the Team 980 listener line.
Hey, what's up, Craig? Hey, I wouldn't mind Sheriff coming back for a 2-year deal. That's actually a good idea if we can pull it off. But like you said, the money is, he might want demand more just because of the cap and stuff. But I would like to see Gibson and Curtis Samuel come back, man. I would like to see what they can do with this new regime. And I haven't really looked at all the other free agents that's available, out there. But as far as, from my own, I think those two will be nice to have and go from there. So that's my take on it.
All right, thanks, Lap. 301-230-0980 if you want to get in on this. I am a huge Curtis Samuel fan. He was fantastic last year. You can't bring him back. And this is simple finances. Where Washington has gotten in trouble with this roster, in large part the last couple of years, is they've overinvested in certain positions. And wide receiver was kind of one of them. They spent a ton of money on Curtis. They re-signed Terry. They draft Jahan, not in that order. But like when you like, this is my thing with Cam Curl, and I know that the last 3 hours of radio from the tweets I was seeing flying and walking by the studio and hearing Russell and Linnell yell at each other about it, I know a lot of it was spent on Cam Curl. But, like, you can't do what they did with Deron Payne, right? You draft Phil Mathis to be the replacement, and then you re-sign Payne for a bunch of money. You draft Jahan Dotson to be the Terry replacement. First round, okay, if Terry walks, he walks, and then you sign him to big money. Not to say that those weren't correct moves, but then why are you spending big draft capital on those positions? And I think sometimes you can short-term it and try to, like, hit a certain window with certain things, kind of like what Cincinnati did with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Tyler Boyd. But now you see that, Cincinnati's tagging Higgins with the idea that they're going to trade him because you can't spend that much at one position. And I think especially with this wide receiver draft class, there's too many good receivers that you can get at rookie money that are not going to be as good as Curtis Samuel, but that are good football players that can fill a similar type of role. Now, Gibson's an interesting one because I do think, like, the flexibility he brings you as a running back wide receiver, like, slash player in a way that is running back first could be something Cliff is really interested in. But again, can you find that player in the draft at much less money, at rookie money versus vet money, and spend your money somewhere else? And then it kind of gets down to, I think, what Anthony is the core of what we're talking about here, right? Which is, if you're going to pay a premium for a veteran, there are two things that you're looking at in terms of why you'd pay that guy extra. One, he's got know-how. He's got experience. There's no replacement for experience, right? Curtis Samuel knows how to win in this league. And I don't mean like win football games. I mean win on routes. He understands leverages. He's played. He's not going to be learning a lot at this point. Like, he'll have to learn the new offense and he'll have to learn how to operate within it. But, like, he knows how DBs play in this league. He understands the speed, all of that stuff. You're also paying for leadership. And I think Curtis is, like, a positive in a locker room, very well liked, very well respected. I think he works hard. I think AG is seen in the same way. But I don't know that those guys are, like, they're more on the neutral end than, like, the superstar leader type end. They're not the loudest voices in the room. They're not guys that people are following necessarily. And so I think if that's the case, I'm not willing to pay that veteran premium. I'd rather go replace them with younger, cheaper options.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And that's just the tricky part of just free agency, the offseason of it all, to be honest. But to, like, answer your question in terms of, like, position groups that I'm more so focused on, if, Cam Curl is going to be departing, if Kendall Fuller is also going to be departing, I'm thinking we need a leader in the defensive back room, just because
Totally.
Those were the two guys that were the most vocal and had the most experience. Derek Forrest.
And by the way, I think you saw the lack of it last year,
Yep.
right? You saw, obviously, the coaching was the number one thing in the departure of Chris Harris, but you also saw the departure of Bobby McCain,
Yep.
who was not like some amazing player, but he was a vet who kept everything together back there.
Yeah, and wasn't too many, like, busts. Like, they worked through those problems, and then, like, things got better. But last season, I would say a lot of defensive miscues and just people being out of place, out of alignment. So that's probably where I would put my most focus. I mean, offensive line is obvious, but that's going to be tough just because there's not that many people to, like, really, like, lean on in free agency. You got Tyron Smith, of course, but
For sure.
everybody's going to be targeting him.
Yeah, definitely. But this is the benefit of having money is, like, can you the J.J. Redick deal, right? How did Philly get J.J. Redick? 1 year, $20 million.
Yep.
Well, I want a 4-year deal. Nope. 1 year, $20 million. Or maybe it was Philly, maybe it was New Orleans, whoever signed him to that. I was like, I want a 4-year deal. JJ was saying on his podcast leading into that summer, whatever it was, like summer of 22, I think. He's like, I want a 4-year deal. I want to find somewhere that I feel like I can retire. And then someone offered him 1 year, $20 million, which was way more than he was going to get. He was looking for like $448, right?
Yeah.
Like 12 per. And someone offered him 20 for one. He's like, we can revisit that next year. So can you do that to someone? And I think, and because people talk about the fact that in the NFL, the cap space can roll over. Well, it kind of rolls over if you sign a 1-year deal because it just opens up again next year. So those are the kinds of things you have to consider. For me, like edge is another position where I think that the know-how, the vet in the room is super helpful. But I think like safety, there's a lot of great options. The Bills actually just released Jordan Poyer.
Ooh.
So like, yeah, I'm interested in Jordan Poyer. Physical dude. He's had a bunch of injury issues, but like I want the vet in the room. And you can also play him in a rotation with some of these younger guys. So I think that there are options there. And I don't know if it'll cost you the same as Cam Curl. And I'd rather have, for the price especially, Jordan Poyer than Cam Curl, given the makeup of who else is in that room. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, normally we do this at 5:30 on Wednesdays, but we got former Washington quarterback Jason Campbell joining us at 5:30. Never read the comments is next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Coming up at 5 o'clock in Not My Beat, just how desperate are the Denver Broncos to bring in a rookie quarterback, and could that mean they offer an insane deal, like, I don't know, Russell Wilson-esque type of deal for the number 2 pick? That's at 5 o'clock, but right now,
we tried to warn them. They didn't listen.
Yeah!
Every week, the Hoffman Show goes into the belly of the beast.
We read those comments, baby.
Never read the comments.
every single week, typically at 5:30. Today at 4:30, though, we dive into the comments section. You already know this show streams live on YouTube every day, live from 4 to 7 at the Team 980. We post highlights at the Team 980 and at Craig Hoffman. We dive in with, I think, kind of where a lot of fans have landed. I think that the Willis Lee speaks for a silent majority here. He says, I'm at the point now that I truly don't have any wish lists, talking about the Commanders and their quarterback situation. Not for anyone in particular in the draft, nor through free agency. I don't care who we re-sign or cut. I just feel like an innocent bystander who can do nothing but watch. The thing is, even though I have no expectations, I cannot wait to see what this season looks like after all the team building is complete. And I think that's where a lot of people are. And we talked about this with Linnell yesterday. Like, the idea that you actually have trust in Adam Peters, that you have trust in the general manager, you have trust in the key decision makers, is such a departure from anything we've seen for any extended period of time. We've had glimpses of it the last 10 years, right? And as of August, I will have been here for 9. So since 2015. I think when McLuhan got here, people were like, oh yeah, I trust that dude. Didn't last very long. When Rivera got here even, I think there was a lot of people that were like, okay, he's not my favorite, but at least he's a professional. At least he knows what he's doing. And then, not great. Obviously, some people had their doubts, and other people looked at, like, Martin Mayhew and were like, isn't that the guy who built the worst team ever in Detroit? So, like, there were definitely questions, but you were like, competent professionals. And then you're like, not very, maybe they're competent, but they're not good. Maybe they're not competent. At least in the roles that they were given. As I look up on television, by the way, Anthony, as I look up on television, and who's sitting on the NFL Live desk?
Wow.
Ron
Rivera.
By the way, talking about the breaking news that the Bills are releasing Tre'Davious White as well. That saves them $10 million on the cap. So Bills remaking their secondary. But the point is, like, the fact that you feel like for the first time, for real, you can sit back and trust the evaluators is a refreshing sigh of relief. Now, that doesn't create like a bunch of hot takes, doesn't create necessarily some of the YouTube comments that we're about to get to where people have strong feelings either way. But I do actually think that's where the majority of the fan base is right now. And it's certainly to an extent where I am, because I think for me, it's twofold. One, I trust the evaluators and I trust the decision makers. Two, I actually like most of their options. If you told me they traded up for Caleb Williams, I'd be like, damn, they probably just got a dude. You told me they stay put and take Jarek May or Jaden Daniels, I'm like, I can see how that works. They tell me they trade down and get multiple first rounders, like, I'm like, cool. That's typically always a good plan. So I think that litany of factors comes together to put us as a Commanders universe in a very different place than we've been for a long, long time. At Johnny Dodger 9426 says, speaking of trading down, can you touch on the fact that the Justin Fields decision will be made in the next 2 weeks, and we will know before the draft whether Chicago will draft a quarterback or not? Doesn't that give Washington ample time, 6 weeks, to field all sorts of trade down offers before the draft starts? With time to negotiate, there could be a more tempting offer to trade down. This is why we had Hugh Myers on the show from Vegas last week. It's why we had Matt Collar on yesterday from Minnesota. It's why we're having Parker Gabriel on from Denver today. I want to know exactly this. How desperate is some team going to get? Because once you know Caleb is off the board, it's like you have the number 1 pick minus that guy. And look, if this was any other year, if you had the number 1 pick and you were going to take Jaden Daniels or Drake May, I don't think that would feel abnormal. Those are guys that are worth it. Those are guys that would be in the discussion because of who they are as prospects. And so could a team do something crazy? And especially if you have leverage, if you're telling teams, look, one, I got 2 other teams on the phone offering me 3 first-rounders. I'm not interested. 2, I don't really want to trade out of this pick. I like these players. I like one of them. I'm not going to tell you which one, but I want to take one of these quarterbacks. So you're going to have to offer me something I literally can't refuse. That's the kind of leverage you have. It's the kind of thing where someone goes, hey, name your price, and then they name it, and you're like, well, I mean, if you're going to give me that much money, I'll take that job. I'll take that offer. I'll do whatever. That's what we're talking about here in terms of leverage for Washington. So I do think the clarity at 1 is definitely something that helps Washington, and the time elapsed in that of knowing that not when you get on the clock because they just took Caleb Williams in late April, but knowing that theoretically in the next couple of days, we see what happens with Justin Fields, at least Chicago, kind of announcing their intentions with Justin Fields, is going to be something to watch. I also think something to watch. I was listening to the Athletic Football Show with Robert Mays and Diana Rossini from the Combine last week, and they were talking about how they don't think that Chicago is going to go to maximize the trade value there. They want to do right by Fields. They want to just move on. They want to have the clean slate. So even though they might not get maximum value, where if they waited till after the draft, they possibly could because the team's going to miss out. I think getting something done before free agency is perhaps a priority for the Bears. So, I guess we're kind of on standby to see what happens there. As for people that do have stronger opinions on these quarterbacks at the top of the first round, or maybe in the middle if you're trading back, as we continue here on Never Read the Comments. Jabril Thomas 9850 says, I'm a Jaden guy personally, cool with Drake at 2 as well. Your theory of taking the value that you receive from trading back, I 100% agree if that's the compensation, but hear me out. I'm not a Sam guy, and I want us to draft a QB at 2. But listen, okay, Jabril, we're listening. What evidence is there realistically for us to believe that J.J. McCarthy is better than Sam Howell? Why not go elsewhere at 11 if you already have a young guy in-house with NFL reps? It's a good question with a simple answer. One, well, I guess a 2-part answer. One, there is no evidence to say that McCarthy is better than Howell as a prospect, but I think most evaluators would predict it. JJ is a taller guy, so some of the seeing over the middle of the field stuff is not an issue with him. That's a big part of his projection. He actually sees the middle of the field very well. And if he can add the weight, he's got, he avoids the size question that we see with Daniels, where you can get yanked down pretty easily. And I think one thing we haven't necessarily talked about enough with Jaden is the sack to pressure ratio, speaking of Howell, is out of control. It's one of the highest ever in college football amongst top prospects. And so, when we talk about the size issues with him, it's not height, it's weight. And we see it because he gets sacked regularly when under pressure. And so I think for McCarthy, a guy who has a much lower number there and who has shown the ability to work from the pocket, even though he wasn't asked to do it often, I think most talent evaluators would project him to be a better NFL player than Sam Howell. With that said, I think the more important point here is contract. Sam is now halfway through his rookie deal. You restart the clock if you take a guy like McCarthy. So if you're going to bring in a vet to start for the year and let McCarthy develop on your bench, then and put on weight and do all the things that you want him to do to maximize his chances of success, you do that, and then by 2025, you've got 4 years of control remaining, where Howell, by 2025, if you want to try to do something else, trade back in the draft, take a receiver and a this and a that, you have to make a contract decision basically going into 25. I mean, I guess you could play him in a lame duck year, but a lot of times that's when you're talking about extensions for guys. So I think that timeline becomes a problem for Howell, which, by the way, is also a reason I would consider trading him, but we'll get to that later on in the show. Let's see. JC Captain Chaos. Sometimes, Anthony, I feel like I should read the screen names before I take on the comment. Perhaps they'd be a hint.
Say it one more time.
JC, Captain Chaos.
Okay.
Should I be arguing with someone on the radio / on the internet whose screen name includes the phrase Captain Chaos?
I don't think so.
Probably not.
Yeah.
Setting myself up for failure here. Anyway, old Chaos says, I would love to debate you on May ceiling versus Daniels. I think you're looking at May with rose-colored glasses. Anthony, I think Captain Chaos doesn't understand what ceiling means.
He might not.
Because what ceiling is not about like how likely it is that a guy hits. It's what is he if he hits.
Yeah.
And like the people arguing May versus Daniels, that Daniels has the higher ceiling, don't understand what ceiling means. Ceiling means like how great could they be? And maybe Jaden is just like super efficient from the pocket and the running stuff is spectacular and he's a Pro Bowler every single year. If Drake May, with the stuff he can do with his arm talent, his mobility, his size, his strength, everything, really learns how to dice people from the pocket, that dude's going to the Hall of Fame. Now, am I predicting that? No. To be very, very clear, no. Everything would have to go right? You have to get him in the right system. It's got to click for him. His footwork has got to get way cleaned up. His mechanics have to get way cleaned up. Stuff that as a younger player, I think a lot of coaches look at and be like, we can do that. But as the video and the segment that we did that I think sparked this comment said, running is the floor, passing is the ceiling. We think about these things backwards. That running is the ceiling and passing is the floor. It's not. Running can help you survive in the league. You eventually, to be great, have to win from the pocket. And as evidence, I give you, Anthony, pop quiz for your personal favorite. This is actually not even a pop quiz, just personal preference. Who do you think is the GOAT quarterback?
Ever?
Yeah.
I mean, right now it's Tom Brady.
Okay. How good of a runner was he?
Terrible.
Yeah. Do I need another piece of evidence? Do I need an exhibit B?
No.
Okay, well, let's pretend I did.
Okay.
Who do you think is the second best quarterback ever?
Patrick Mahomes.
It's a great call.
I mean, a lot of people probably gonna say the Joe Montanas or the
Yeah, I think you're probably. I mean, that even is the best counter argument because I think the candidates are Joe Montana, Peyton Manning.
Yep.
Steve Young maybe, but like I think he's a tier below those guys. Statistically, Marino.
Yeah, Dan.
Those guys weren't exactly the most mobile of dudes. Their ceilings were Hall of Fame, Pantheon level quarterbacks because they killed you with their arms from the pocket. Now, you want to go Elway, you want to go Mahomes, two guys that can run and are in that same conversation. But they're not Lamar and Mike Vick as runners. Their mobility elevated, but why were they great? Because they were great passers. This is not meant to discount quarterback mobility. Quarterback mobility is an essential survival skill in the modern NFL. Scrambles are perhaps the most valuable play in the sport. But ultimately, you have to have a and that is why that survival skill means your floor. Your ceiling to be great is the ability to look at a defense, go set hut, get the ball, find the right guy, and let him do the work. Or have no more work to do because you found him in the end zone for a touchdown. That's the difference between ceiling and floor. And the ceiling for May as a passer, because of his arm talent, which is greater than Jaden Daniels, doesn't mean he's more consistent. That doesn't mean he's ultimately even going to be more effective. But because of his arm strength, because of his size, because of his ability to throw off platform, because of his ability to throw on the run, because he looks to throw on the run, where Jaden, when he runs, he typically runs. He's not running to throw, he's running to run. His ceiling is higher. Don't get it twisted. Think we sussed that out?
I think that was a great explanation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Why they pay me to talk in this microphone. Connor Easter Day, 306 as we roll on. Never read the comments. Leave your comment on YouTube on our on-demand videos at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. So he's a Daniels guy, and I think this actually proves my point. Drake May has a significantly lower floor than Jaden Daniels. It's not even close. Yes, he can run around and make some high-caliber throws, but when it comes to pocket play, he is the worst of the 6 potential first-round quarterbacks. He has awful feel for pressure, oftentimes gliding right into pressure. He doesn't get his feet set to throw. The same is true on the run. He doesn't have natural feel for climbing the pocket. Daniels is a natural in the pocket. It's innate. That stuff, he didn't say stuff. I'm regulated by the FCC. The internet comments are not. That stuff is hard to teach. Daniels also has a much more natural and repeatable motion. This isn't even close. Daniels is so much safer as a prospect. May is truly boom or bust. And I think people hear that and expect me, as someone who has kind of floated over to Drake May's side of the argument, to go like, no, that's wrong. Here's the thing, Anthony. That's exactly correct. I don't know that all the analysis points in there are correct, but Drake May is the bigger boom or bust. The question is, you have to ask yourself as an organization is, do you think you can set up a situation where you get the boom? And if you don't think that you have the infrastructure and the coaching, 1, that's not good. 2, you do probably go the safer route in Jaden Daniels. Like, I think Jaden Daniels will make some plays, run around. Like, you know, his floor is like Tyrod Taylor. Right? Like, I think there's a version of his career that in 10 years, Jaden Daniels is a really high-quality backup in the league. He goes in, he throws for 300 yards in a game. Like, he's running around, he makes plays. Like, that could absolutely be a version of Jaden Daniels' career. He could also be much better than that. He could also be quasi-Lamar Jackson. Dual threat, can dice you from the pocket, win games with his legs. Terrible for you to face in the playoffs because, like, what do you do with a guy who can run like that? Like, there is a version of his career that goes that way. That's a pretty, I don't want to say narrow window of possibilities, but it's more narrow than Drake May could go to the Hall of Fame or be out of the league in 4 years. And that's the reality. But I think you have to ask yourself, if we think this guy could go to the Hall of Fame or be a perennial All-Pro or Pro Bowler, are we the team that can get him there? And if Washington with Cliff and Brian Johnson and all the Tavita Pritchard and David Blau and, you know, Adam Peters and all the different quarterback and offensive infrastructure that they're going to bring in, both in coaching and then I mentioned Peters because he's going to be the guy who surrounds this quarterback with the other pieces. Are we the team that can get Drake May there? And if you believe that you are, then you better take him. And that's, I think, the question that Adam Peters is asking. Never read the comments. Rolling on here on the Hoffman Show. Mr. Neophyte did some research for us because we were talking about the likelihood of a quarterback being drafted high, being successful versus later on in the draft. Here's Super Bowl champions by guys who were drafted first overall. 16 Super Bowl championships won by guys who were not drafted first overall. 41. The number 1 overall guys, Bradshaw, Plunkett, Aikman, Elway, both Mannings, and then Matthew Stafford. Of the 41 that were not drafted first overall, Brady's got 7, Mahomes 3, Montana 4. So there's 14 of the 41. If you extend it to guys who were drafted in the top 10, they have 25 of the 57 Super Bowls that are accounted for in this research. So my question would then be, if 16 of 57, which is 28%, it's like, oh, well, it's only 28%. Is there another draft spot? Is there another plan that's better? And this is what we're actually talking about here. It's, do we think that there is a better way to acquire a quarterback than drafting them high? And if there was a better proven method with some high level of guaranteed results, I think everyone would endorse that method. But there's not. And so that's why I think ultimately you probably wind up taking quarterback as high as you possibly can, a.k.a. for the Commanders, number 2. Last but not least, here to wrap up, never read the comments. We did our topic earlier in the week after Jason Kelce's retirement, where we asked, does DC have a Jason Kelce? And Beer De Silva says, we don't have a Kelce. Only thing is in a distant second with Rigo, but no real comparison. Philly fans are emotionally invested in Jason, and Philly is more of a blue-collar town where DC is more of a white-collar town. I feel a sense of loss when I remember a lot of their trench players by name. Mentions Lane Johnson, Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, on and on. Still playing today, I think I relate to the bond they had and kind of special, just my point of view. I think that's how a lot of older DC fans feel. It's like they remember the Hogs. And that's how it is for like the whole town versus the select group of, Caps fans, for instance, who will absolutely cry when Ovechkin retires. All right. Wrapping up as I'm dying here, Anthony. I don't have any water.
I'm watching you die.
Tell you what. We're done. We're at the point in the clock where I'm supposed to take a break. I had a funny comment. It's not worth it. I need to take a break so I can go get water. This is what happens this time of year. The pollen in DC is out of control. And I'm dying live on the radio. So coming up next, I will tell you that we will check in on another team that I think could be in the mix to trade up and might be the most desperate team to trade up to the number 2 pick. That is next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And it is time, just after 5 o'clock, to continue to track what teams could potentially try to blow the Washington Commanders out of the water with an offer for the second pick in the 2024 NFL Draft.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Last time we had our guest on was when the team that we cover plays the team that he covered back in week 2, and it's a pleasure to welcome back the Denver Post. Parker Gabriel covers the Broncos out in Colorado. Parker, welcome back, man. How are you?
I'm doing well. We wouldn't have thought that we'd be having this conversation when Denver scored on its first 3 possessions that week 2 game and went up 21-3.
Nor when Washington came back. Nor when, one of those teams should have been good based off of those halves of football, and yet here we are.
Yeah, neither of them were good.
Yeah, turns out that's what made it a great game, is they were equals in terribleness. So obviously the big story out there is that Russell Wilson has been released. There's this record cap hit, so record, in fact, that it is more than the previous 2 highest combined. So like the what is now 2 and 3 biggest record cap hit is you combine those, and it's less than what the Broncos cap hit is for Russell Wilson. Considering that, let's start here before we kind of get into the meat of this conversation of potential trades and where kind of the Broncos go now. Why are they willing to do this? Like, is it the relationship with Sean Payton? Is it Wilson's play, which on paper actually didn't even look that bad? Like, can you give our audience here in DC the backstory of why and how we got to this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I mean, it's a lot of things, but a key part of it is that the situation wouldn't actually have been that much better a year from now. So the way Russell Wilson's contract works is what became a huge story late in the season when he got benched was this $37 million that was going to become guaranteed on March 17th for 2025. The Broncos didn't want him. They were nervous even going back to the middle of the season about him getting hurt, not being able to pass a physical, and that $37 million getting locked in for 2025, not even next year or this coming season. So, that's where the drama came in. But once that $37 million locked in, it also would have changed, obviously, the guaranteed money and the cost of moving on from Russell Wilson. So, yeah, it's $85 million split over 2 years to get rid of him now. But a year from right now, that number would have been 86.6. Now, assuming the salary cap keeps going up, it probably would have been a lower percentage of your 2-year salary cap. But the Broncos were really looking at paying Russell Wilson charging $85 million to their cap over 2 years for him to not play, or charging $122 million over their cap over the next 3 to have him play this coming season. And so they decided it was better to just start the clock toward being free and clear of Russ's money now rather than a year from now. And
to be clear, if he was playing at an all-pro level, they just pay him because that was the whole point in acquiring it. So, what is Russ as a quarterback at this point in his career?
Yeah, I think he can still be an effective player. I mean, you saw it at times this past year. But he is – the thing is, some quarterbacks that play like Russell, and let's be clear, Russell Wilson was on the front edge of the sort of, mobile outside the pocket quarterback revolution in the NFL. He's done it at a really high level for a long time, especially in Seattle. But as he got older, he did not really move to being more of a pocket operator. I mean, he's still a color outside the lines quarterback, and he is going to make you some plays over the course of a game or a quarter of a season or a full season that not a lot of guys in the NFL can make. He's still that guy. But the thing is, he's also going to miss on some things that the vast majority of NFL quarterbacks don't miss on. And so that ratio was just, it's been more out of skew. It's leaned more toward the things he misses in the last 2 years. And that ratio was far too much to that end of the spectrum for Sean Payton's liking.
Parker Gabriel, Broncos reporter for the Denver Post, is with us. So earlier in the week, one of our regular guests lobbed out there that, hey, if Russell Wilson now getting paid all this money from Denver and he's going to come on the cheap, like I would take Russell Wilson here in Washington as a mentor for whoever they ultimately draft at number 2 if they stay there and take a quarterback. To which a lot of fans and also myself went, well, hold on. I don't know that Russell Wilson's the ideal mentor based off some of the stuff you've heard. You covered him day in, day out the last couple of years. Like, how is Russell Wilson the teammate compared to all of the varying storylines and things you hear over his decade in the league?
Yeah, I mean, like, depending on who the young guy is, like, you might not want to burnish your public image exactly like Russell did. He's unique in that way. It sounds like a PR campaign every time he steps to a podium. But like, as far as like work ethic goes, you will not find anybody who says the guy doesn't work hard, that he's always the first one in the building. He's always been, that way. He didn't like where he was at physically in 2022. He never really admitted that publicly, but he said it in a way on Brandon Marshall's podcast a couple of weeks ago. And you could tell because he came back this fall in great shape. I mean, he looked really good and he stayed healthy and he played in all 15 games and all that. So like from a work ethic standpoint and all of that, like he would be a good mentor. He's got a unique way of playing. And so if you have a young guy who plays a different way than Russell, like obviously you don't want to take everything about the way Russell Wilson plays the game. If you're, I don't know, Drake May, let's say, but there would be a lot to learn. I don't know if that's all that likely in Washington. Stranger things have happened, obviously, but certainly Russell Wilson could find himself in a situation this coming year where he's playing in front of a guy who he knows categorically is going to take his job at some point.
Yeah, I highly doubt it happens here, but you never know. Weirder things have happened, and many of them happen in Washington. So what are you going to do? Parker Gabriel, Broncos reporter for the Denver Post, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, so this is kind of where the rubber meets the road then, Parker, because now the Broncos need a quarterback. They have Jarrett Stidham. They like him on some level. You know better than I, and you can tell the audience and me as you answer this. But, like, what is the plan for the Broncos at quarterback, and could that potentially involve trading up from 12 in the 2024 NFL Draft?
Yeah, it's the plan is coming together, and it definitely could involve trading up. They like Jarrett Stidham. I don't think it goes a lot past that. They think he has a little bit of upside. He played okay in the last 2 games of the year, not great. And he played basically, he hasn't played a lot in his career, but he looked essentially like he's looked so far in his career when he's been on the field. But it is not going to be Jarrett Stidham and, Ben DiNucci when the Broncos open camp in July. It's not even going to be a rookie in Jarrett Stidham, probably. I expect that they will sign a quarterback in free agency, and it remains to be seen whether they try to play in that middle market or if they're bargain hunting. I think Sean Payton likes Baker Mayfield, but like if you're talking ideal circumstance, you find 2024 Baker Mayfield where you pay the $4 million rather than 30 or 35 million, and you get a guy who has sort of a resurgent season. Like that's probably what you're looking for. And then as far as the draft, like they're in a really strange spot because at number 12, you could certainly, you guys I'm sure have been talking about it constantly. It could be 1, 2, 3 at quarterback. Maybe one of those guys slips through or somebody trades up. But one way or another, like guys are going to come off the board fast, and the Broncos are in this set where like Minnesota at 11, Denver at 12, Vegas at 13, all are probably on the quarterback hunt. And so like, does someone go way up? Is someone trying to get to 7 or 9 or 10? And so factor into that, the Broncos don't have a second round pick, and going up is going to be really expensive no matter what. But I don't know. Sean Payton doesn't trade back much. He goes forward a lot more than he goes back. So if they really like somebody, they're certainly a candidate to try to make it work.
So one of the rumors that I heard in Indianapolis as I was floating around there is that Payton loves Drake May. And I don't know if you've heard that. I'm guessing if I heard it, then you've certainly heard it, whether you believe it or not. Your job is to vet these types of things. I just come back and blab it in the radio that, hey, I heard that Sean Payton loves Drake May. If he does, though, is the Russ trade going to scar them out of making a big offer, or do you think that they will maintain their aggressiveness under the Walton Group as owners with Sean Payton, as you just said, who will go up and advocate for getting a guy? Like, is Denver a potential team that would do what it takes to peel Washington off of a number 2 pick that they're probably not going to trade unless someone makes them, the classic offer you can't refuse?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I don't think we quite know the answer to it. It's fascinating because Sean Payton wasn't here when they made that trade in 2022, obviously. And the Walton Penner family ownership group wasn't here either. I mean, that trade happened in March of 2022. It was right at the beginning of the sale process, but then they didn't actually close on the franchise until August. And so they just paid for the extension for Russ. They weren't there when the trade was made. So I think there's every reason to say, if you think it's a guy that can lead your franchise for the next decade, what happened in terms of giving up the capital for Russell Wilson doesn't matter. You can't let that dictate. But, and it would also be sort of level-headed to say, you have given away so much draft capital in the last 2 years. How are you going to give up? Let's just say, San Francisco gave up 3 number 1 picks to move from 12 to 3 a couple of years ago. That would mean that in a 6-year span or 7 draft span, the Broncos, theoretically, their only number 1 picks would be Pat Surtain and whoever they moved up to take this year. It's going to be really hard to build a roster that way. So it's a fascinating scenario for them to be in. I think, there's been, Sean Payton said really nice things about Caleb Williams when he was on TV at Fox last year or 2 years ago. He has been tied to J.J. McCarthy. He's been tied, like you said, to Drake May. The guy who doesn't get talked about at all that actually, to me, makes the most sense is Jaden Daniels, because at LSU, there's 2 guys on the Broncos staff. Their VP of Health and Player Performance and their defensive line coach literally were with Jaden Daniels at LSU, and their defensive line coach helped recruit him to Arizona State. So, there's connections there. It's hard. It's hard for me to sit here and think that at the end of the day, they're going to have the ammo to not only move up that far, but to outbid whoever else is in that process too.
And that's, I think, what some of us in Washington are hoping for is there is the bidding war. I had a Raiders person on last week saying Antonio Pierce is going to do whatever it takes to make sure that they get Jaden Daniels. So you got the interdivision thing going on between Denver and Vegas as well. And those are just 2 of the potential suitors of teams that want to move up. We'll see what happens with Cousins, et cetera. Minnesota enters that mix over the next couple of weeks. Parker, great stuff as always. Always looking for excuses to have you on the show. Much appreciate your time, sir, and enjoy the next 6 months of wackiness or 6 weeks of wackiness heading into the draft.
Yeah, you bet. Same to you guys, and just, call me when the mega trade goes down.
Yeah, we will. Let's go. Mega trade, baby. Parker, thank you, sir.
Yep, see you guys.
That is Parker Gabriel with us from the Denver Post here on the Hoffman Show. Anthony, I will say, if a mega trade goes down, we got Q in Vegas. We got Parker in Denver. Matt was awesome from Minnesota. Who else? What other teams do we think are in the mix here?
Probably the Patriots.
I guess the Patriots could go from 3 to 2.
Less likely on the Falcons, but they
Maybe.
Still are a team right now anyway.
Yeah, I think that's possible in Atlanta. We know some folks down there. So we're basically, if a mega trade goes down, we got you covered. Of course, they could also just stand pat and be like, no, we really love Drake May or Jaden Daniels, and we're going to take them. But the question becomes, who do you put in that quarterback room with that young quarterback to make sure that they are successful? I've got a list that I'm going to give you next, and then we'll talk to Jason Campbell about how important it is to have that guy in the first place, because Jason was a young quarterback in the NFL once upon a time. That's next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Is it necessary to have a veteran quarterback to mentor your young quarterback? I don't know if necessary is the right word, but I certainly think it helps a lot, which is why I look my head tilted at the current Washington quarterback room, because there's one guy currently in it, and that is Sam Howell. So Sam is a guy that I like. I obviously, if you've been listening to the show for a long time, was very high on Sam and thought he was headed in a good direction for much of last year until it was very obvious that he was not. And he's got some experience, and I think he can play. And I think with much better coaching and better play calling, like, he's a guy that you can win some games with. I don't know that he's your franchise guy, because I think a lot of the flaws that people saw in Sam Howell coming out of school are the things that manifested themselves last year. And thus you go, okay, that's not stuff we made up. Those are real issues. He's not our franchise guy. So that gets you to, okay, we have the number 2 pick now. By the way, he also quarterbacked every single game on a team that wound up record-wise with the number 2 pick. Not exactly stellar, even if it's not all his fault, or remotely even all his fault, even not majority-wise his fault. But that leaves you with a number 2 pick and the chance to take a generational talent. And then your organization becomes a project site, especially with these quarterbacks. I think Drake May, even as talented as he is a bit of a project. Jaden Daniels is a bit of a project. Caleb Williams, I think, is a bit of a project. So any of these guys that you draft are going to take some incubation. They're going to take some time to grow into what they ultimately can be. And while you cannot sacrifice the entire organization for quarterback growth, I do think, Anthony, it is required for you to make sure that you do some stuff that is about that guy. And so what I've done mentally / in my notes here is come up with a list of things that I want in the Commanders quarterback room. And then we can cross-check it with the free agent class and see which one of those guys we think would be a good fit. Sound good?
Sounds great.
All right. So first things first, I think I need a guy who can seriously play football for me in September. So what do I mean by that? I mean that there's a really good chance that the best possible thing for this number 2 pick, based off how raw some of these guys are coming in, is that they sit a year. I'm not the biggest proponent of sitting, but I also understand its value. And so if the determination is made that Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams if he falls or J.J. McCarthy or whoever they wind up taking at 2 or otherwise in the first round is not ready to start on day 1, or the best thing for them long-term is not to start on day 1. I need a quarterback who I think gives me a chance to win football games day 1. This isn't the NBA where you do multi-year rebuilds. You are trying to win every game always. And as a franchise, this is where your responsibility is not to tank and not just be like, whatever happens. Your responsibility is to try to win as many games as you can every single year. So are we on the same page there? Do we agree with that piece of criteria?
I agree with that piece of criteria. I would have a question, though, about it.
Okay.
Because the fact that Sam Howell is still on this roster, I don't necessarily know your faith and, belief in Sam Howell still, but he won us some games last year.
I think that Sam Howell checks that box.
Okay, just making sure.
Now, there's some other boxes we're going to get to where Sam has a harder time getting that little Chekaruski.
Okay, that's a bet.
But I do think first and foremost, maybe not even first and foremost, on the list is can start week 1.
Yeah.
And give me a chance to win.
Okay.
Not maximal chance to win. I'm not looking for a Super Bowl contender because then I wouldn't need to draft a quarterback at 2. Those guys don't become available. But I need someone who gives me a legit shot to win.
I like it.
Thing 2, I need them to understand that they are a placeholder. Now, it could be what I think Jacoby Brissett perhaps thought Washington could be last year. We're going to use each other. You're going to help mentor our young guy. You're going to get to play. But ultimately, it's really about the young guy. And if you play well enough, maybe you'll get a shot somewhere else. But you understand that this ain't your job long term. And I think this is where Sam Howell doesn't check the box. Because Sam's a young guy. He should want this to be his job long term. It was his job last year. Now, did he do the best job ever with it? No. But if Sam goes out and plays well, he's like, I'm 24 years old. I'm going to go out and throw, I would say he puts together a 10-7. Say he winds up playing the whole year. Goes 10-7. Throws for 3,800 yards and 25 touchdowns and 12 picks. It's not like an amazing season, but like for your second year as a starter, after what this year was, if he shows growth throughout the year, the arrow points the right direction, why would you start someone else the year after? Like, that becomes an issue. Now, some people are like, let's have those issues. I will take a winning season. I get it. But I think going in, combined with the other factors, and the third big one that I'm going to talk about in a minute, I think we're just better off going in with a guy who understands what the score is clear up front. Adam Peters and Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn need to be super clear with this guy. This is what it is, in a way that the last regime was not with Jacoby Brissett, who has made it pretty clear that he thought he would have a chance to start. And it's like, nope, we're going to go into the year. We're going to see how the young guy is. If he's ready to go, it's going to be his job. But if not, you can expect to play probably for a while until he's ready. So that would be, and that the whoever the vet is like, cool. Which brings us to number 3. We need a veteran who actually has veteran stuff to offer. And this is where Sam also falls short, in my opinion. And this isn't to say, by the way, that they couldn't keep 3 and have Sam in the room as well. You have the veteran and the buddy system, because Sam and Drake know each other if it turns out to be Drake May, for instance, right? But like Ryan Tannehill and Tyrod Taylor and these older Jacoby Brissett have seen a lot of football. Sam Howell has 1 season's worth of NFL football. He's never, outside of the division opponents, he's never seen a coach or a team a second time. Like, there are things he just doesn't know because he doesn't have the experience yet. And that's okay. It just isn't what we're looking for, to be able to lean over to the rookie's locker and be like, hey, watch out for this weekend. Or, hey, I remember when I went through that. So those are my big 3 things. 1, can you play football at an NFL starter, borderline starter level? 2, can you be okay with being replaced based off almost nothing to do with your performance? And 3, do you have something to offer in the room? So, the top-rated quarterbacks, the top 8, according to NFL.com, that are about to hit free agency. Let's see how many of them pass the test. 1, Kirk Cousins. Technically passes the test, but too expensive. And I also don't know how okay he's going to be being replaced, to be honest, because I think he's like, I was playing the best football of my career before the Achilles injury. I can come back and pick back up there, and maybe I'm still getting better, and, I do something crazy in my late 30s. Brissett, if he is willing to come back, if he doesn't see burgundy and gold and go, ugh, based off his experience last year, and if he's okay with being replaced, I think Brissett is the best guy on this list. Would you agree with that, Ant? Do you want to hear the other names first?
Yeah, let me hear the other ones.
Baker is their 3rd-ranked quarterback. I think he's looking for a long term. He doesn't pass the test. Ryan Tannehill. I think he ultimately might be the answer. He's been a starter. He wasn't really keen on what went down in Tennessee, but he's now coming into a different situation. It's not someone's taking his job. He is signing up to do this. So if he's willing, I think Tannehill passes with flying colors. Russ, I don't know that his whole personality is the one I want as a mentor. Jameis, no, does not pass the mentor test. Gardner Minshew, a little young, but he's made 37 starts in 5 seasons. And he ran like some RPO stuff pretty well. So could he be someone who sets an example for the young quarterback? I think Minshew actually kind of low-key passes that test. And then especially if it's Jaden Daniels, I think Tyrod Taylor, as a fellow mobile quarterback who's not just mobile but like a real threat to run, I think he passes that test in spades as well.
Yeah, I would probably go Jacoby, Tyrod, and then Minshew. Those would be my top 3, I would say.
So you're out on Tannehill.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest Tannehill guy.
Dang. I think Tannehill and Drake May, excellent pairing. Big dudes, big arms, line drive throwers. Obviously, Tannehill's biggest success came with Derrick Henry and running the football a ton.
Yeah.
And that's how Drake, I think, should probably start. But a guy who's a really good athlete, does a lot of stuff on the move. I think that he could be really good for Drake May. So, is this necessary in the first place, though? Or am I making this up? Is this something that's not a thing for a young quarterback? And what kind of veteran quarterback can help a young quarterback? Let's ask someone who was a young quarterback in the NFL once. Jason Campbell joins us next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. And it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show former Washington quarterback Jason Campbell, also the Auburn radio analyst and doing a lot more down there at his alma mater. JC, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, going on, Greg? I'm doing pretty good, man. Can't complain. Just, enjoying a new life right now. Had a newborn about 6 weeks ago. So just,
congratulations. We heard. We tried to get you on a couple weeks ago, and Ant was like, well, they just had a baby, so he's going to need a couple weeks. And I was like, you know what? I think that sounds fair. How is this your first?
Yeah, it's our first.
When was the last time you slept?
Oh, man, I tell you what, last time I slept for more than 3 hours straight probably was a month and a half ago. So I'm on that night shift duty, so, getting up whenever the baby kind of needs, really every 2 to 3 hours. But sometimes they cluster eat, so sometimes they want it faster than that. So, sleep is not a priority right now because she is.
Oh, I hear you, man. We don't have kids yet, but looking down in the future, like watching my niece grow up it's wild. And just learning all about it it's It's a lot of fun from what I hear, but it is also these first couple weeks. Yeah, definitely, as you said, she's a priority. Sleep is not. Congratulations. Really happy for you guys, and appreciate some time here. And when you could, I guess, be napping to save up for that night shift. So, Jason, I wanted to get to a couple of things with you. Obviously, being down there at Auburn, calling the games. Like, you've seen some of these SEC guys. You saw Bo Nix when he was at Auburn before he went to Oregon. You've seen Jaden Daniels. But I want to get to those guys in a second and kind of the college guys. But where I want to start with you is something that I've been kicking around for whoever the Commanders draft with that number 2 pick at quarterback, which is what kind of environment do they step into? When you got here in your rookie year, Mark Brunell was here, so you had that veteran in the room. How important is it for a young quarterback to have not like a young vet like a Sam Howell, but a true vet who's been around, seen things, been there, done that, as part of the team that's kind of helping get his career launched?
Yeah, you talk about Sam Howell as a young guy. He's still considered young. He's really not even a full veteran just yet. So when a young kid comes in or gets drafted to Washington and Sam Howell's still in the room, to Sam, that still looks like an opportunity to compete. Where there's a veteran that's in the room, he's already been spoken to by the ownership. He's already been talked to as far as saying, hey, we're going to draft this young quarterback, and we kind of want you to kind of take him under your wings and, kind of show him the way a little bit. We'll probably start you, just to kind of get him, so he can get acclimated. But sometimes the conversation is, hey, we may start him week 1, but whichever way it goes, we just want to make sure that you're on board and getting him prepared and teaching him as much as you can teach him. And that's very important because, it's not just what you do on Sundays. It's kind of like how you handle yourself during a week for his preparation. When you're at practice and then watching film, you can watch film, but how do you break down the film? Do you know what you're looking at when you're watching film? Those are things that a veteran can help. And he can also help a young guy as far as time management, because once you leave the practice facility, what you do for those next couple hours and taking care of your body and what are you watching to get ready for the next day is important, because you have that leisure time. So how dedicated are you going to be to the game?
Can you give us, you just gave us so many great general examples, but can you give us like a specific one, maybe of one that you learned from Mark Brunell, for instance, that if it had not been for Mark telling you, A, you may have gone about a certain thing, B, whether that's film, the post facility time, whatever it may be that pops to mind?
Yeah, Mark did a few things for me. One, I'd say the first thing was off the field, as far as like, hey, man, make sure you get involved in the community. Make sure that you're, if you say you're going to do something, make sure you be where you're supposed to be when you're supposed to be there. Just those little things, which I was going to do anyways at that point, but just hearing it from a vet and everything. But then also, like, I asked the real question, like, hey, man, you're always one play away from playing. What are things that I should do as a rookie or young in my career to set me up for my future, so when I'm done playing, that, I can look back and I can appreciate it all, but at the same time, I made wise decisions. And, he always talked to me about, about saving your income. Don't get caught up into a whole bunch of business deals and ideas, because everybody's going to come to you, because they see your name and you're a starting quarterback in Washington, and everybody's going to want a piece of you. You don't have enough time to give to everybody. You can't give all your time being here and being there and then still trying to prepare and be ready to play on game day. So there's going to be opportunities that you're going to have to turn down just because you need to allow that time to be prepped in your playbook and getting ready for Sunday. And instead of trying to be downtown, trying to shoot a commercial or trying to do something else that's going to pay you a little bit more money at the time, you have to value what's more important at the time and how to save some of those things for the off season. And if they still want to give it to you during season, they'll still be there for you when the off season comes. So a lot of it was just learning those time dedicated, and then learning how to say no to certain things, and not because, I was a person that I was kind of say yes to everything. I do this, I do that. But then he taught me, like, hey, man, I know that's kind of maybe some of your MO, but you're going to have to tone it down a little bit as far as, like, understanding that your time is just as valuable and what you do with it is just as valuable. So know how to say no to certain things. And I'm not saying no forever, but just in the beginning until you can get yourself acclimated, because you don't want to get easily distracted, because D.C. is a place that, there's a lot that goes on in Washington. It's a great football town. It's a, especially when we was the Redskins, like everybody loved the Redskins, and everything. So you can get acclimated to that because, especially as a quarterback, you was the second most popular person in the city behind the president. So, and it wasn't just saying that. You actually felt that when you stepped out into the city. You're living out in Virginia or whatever, you feel one way. But once you walk into the city, you realize how many people pay attention to Washington football. You now understand and you get it. So for him, he helped me a lot away from the game. And then on the game days, it was a lot of just, hey, man, how you watch film. You can't break down everything in 1 week. Let's figure out what they do best defensively, what are their top blitzes, what are their top coverages, and focus more on those things and then kind of react to some of the things that they do frequently.
Jason Campbell, former NFL quarterback, with us here on the Hoffman Show. So many different things in there that I think we could touch on. Jason, I also ask you, though, like, as your career went on, you became the vet. Like, how different is it received both when you were the young guy and when you were the vet, passing along that advice when it is from a teammate? Because I think one of the places where maybe fans go, well, Craig, they just hired all this QB talent. They just hired Brian Johnson. They hired Cliff Kingsbury. They have Tavita Pritchard. David Blau was in the league last year, retires, becomes the assistant quarterback's coach. But how different are those conversations with a teammate versus a coach?
Yeah, it's different because if you talk to a coach, you want to know, like, how much of my conversation is really private. Like, how much is if I'm being vulnerable with you as a coach, how much is it going to hurt me or help me that I'm being this vulnerable with you? But when you talk to a teammate, it's kind of like, okay, I'm talking to my teammate who doesn't make a decision on whether I'm going to be on this football team or not be on this football team. I'm talking to my teammate who's supposed to, like, have my back and supposed to help me, because I'm supposed to learn things from him that he's already gone through that he's supposed to teach me. And sometimes as a young person, your best learning curve is watching what someone else has done or what they've gone through. So you don't have to go through the same thing and ask them why they went through that and how did they get to that. So that way your steps may be different, but you have to ask those questions where you may not feel comfortable enough going to a coach, asking the coach those questions. So you feel like when it comes down to decision time, you don't know if that's going to be held against you or not. So those are the type of things that go on. That's why it's important to have a veteran in the room. And then also conversation that a player have with another player is different. There may be certain things that the quarterback doesn't like they may not feel like they're calling plays to be tailored to his skill level. It's just based on what they want to do, but not really tailored to what he feels most comfortable with. So then as a vet, sometimes you can kind of take that information and kind of approach it with the quarterback coach and approach it with the offensive coordinator, watching film, and just say, hey, man, I don't really think, just watching, like, he really likes this play. Just kind of watch his footwork. I don't really think his feet is telling him where to go. He doesn't really feel comfortable when I watch it. Have y'all ever thought about maybe, changing it up and seeing if he can do it this way? And I've been in a situation like that before, and the coaches actually took my advice and actually tailored it a little bit better to the younger quarterback and helping him feel a lot comfortable and everything. And because I played in an era sometimes where you have to fit the system. They're going to play you to fit the system. Where nowadays they don't do that anymore because a lot of high school coaches, college coaches, and pro coaches are running hybrid offenses where they try to go fast. So they do these no huddles. They try to put pressure on the defenses and everything. And when they do that, it gives the quarterback an opportunity to have high level success because it takes out a lot of blitz packages that defenses can do against you. But now they tailor the game to the style of their quarterback. You see how Baltimore utilized Lamar in the run game as well as the passing game. You see how Andy Reid tailored his passing game around Mahomes, and then how he still allows Mahomes to be Mahomes, where they dial up some plays where they use him in the QB runs like they did in the Super Bowl, where he's running out the backside for 15, 18 yards. Where back in the day, it was like, no, we're not going to run our quarterback. We're just going to run our running backs. But now, understanding the threat of having a guy that can do both presents a lot of problems to defenses and everything, and that's just the way the game has evolved.
I got to say, Jason, the story you told about, kind of not tricking coaches, but being able to manipulate and get the information there. I feel like that's preparing you for fatherhood. I feel like eventually your young daughter, you're not going to have to worry about this for now, obviously, but eventually being able to trick someone into doing the thing that you want them to do. Like that's the key to parenting, I think.
Well, the thing is, you're not necessarily tricking them. It's just that you're using a different approach where they're not coming off defensive.
Right. Yeah. You got to create the buy-in.
Right, because sometimes you tell someone something too straight up, sometimes they get defensive, and then they're not hearing you anymore. But if you come from a different angle where you're saying, like, hey, just watch his footwork, watch his, and they trust in you because you played the position,
right?
Especially been in the game for a long time. They like, okay, what do you think? And then I know because I've already talked to the young quarterback what he feels comfortable with, but I make it where they don't know that it came from him. And then you just say, hey, I think we should approach it this way and see if this works. And then that way they'll say, okay, we'll try it out in practice and see if he feels comfortable with it. And if not, then we'll just kind of get rid of the play or we'll figure out another way. And so it's those type of lines of communication that you have to have and everything to, especially in the NFL, man, because these long seasons, you're going to have some great games, you're going to have some bad games, and you're going to need someone there that's kind of gone through it and know how to get picked up and everything and how to keep moving because it's a long season. You think about the NFL, it's almost 2 college seasons in one NFL season, except for now they play all these playoff games in college, so now they're getting on up there. So it's not like it was when I came out where 12, 13 games in college, and by the time you play 4 preseason games, 16 regular season games, that was 20 before you even got to the playoffs. That was a long season. So having someone that understands, when you hit the wall, how to help you get through the wall is very important.
No doubt about it. Jason Campbell, former NFL quarterback, of course, here in D.C., but current Auburn radio analyst for their football games down there on the plains, which means you, sir, have seen Jaden Daniels play football up close. What do you think of the LSU quarterback as a pro prospect and especially as a prospect for that number 2 pick for the Commanders?
Yeah, I've seen Jaden grow tremendously as far as a passer, from his junior season to his senior year at LSU. And, the one thing that really he does really well with his eyes. And you have to defend so much when you play against him because the threat of his speed to run, those backside runs can just kill a defensive front. Then if you get rush lanes and you get out of the lane, you can give up a 15, 20-yard run in a heartbeat. So it forces your defensive front to rush under control rather than rush relentlessly to go sack the quarterback. But he opposes you a lot of threats because his accuracy that when he's throwing the ball, yes, he has Malik Neighbors and those type of guys at LSU and Brian Thomas Jr. who can go and get it. But when we played against him, man, his accuracy, he was just so on point on getting back to number 2 and number 3. Like the number 1 wasn't there. Before he thought to run, he always brought his eyes back to 2 and 3. And then running felt like sometimes was his last resort, which is what you like in a quarterback like him because, hopefully he's able to protect himself longer, but he's giving his other guys an opportunity to win on their route first before giving up on it and taking off and running. And then with his element to run just adds the extra dynamic. And I think he'll actually put on a little bit more muscle once he gets into the NFL. And everything, I would say that's the only thing on him is just, probably just gain a little bit more weight to be able to take the pounding of a 17 games regular season schedule. But other than that, though, there's not a lot of things that you don't like about him. He's, like I said, he's gone through a transition of coming over from Arizona State to LSU and then playing in one of the toughest conferences where he played against a lot of great defenses in the SEC where a lot of those guys play on Sundays. So he's been challenged and he's been battle tested and he still won the Heisman this year. So there's a lot of things I like about him and everything. So, it's going to be a hard pass on him at that number 2 pick and everything. I just think Washington's in a really good position because, there's some couple guys there, but you don't have to give up this time a lot of trades to draft a guy at that position.
Yeah, no doubt. One thing that I think is the biggest red flag for me for Jaden, I like him a lot. I certainly would not have any qualms with them drafting him. But one of the things that has been statistically proven over time is that if you weigh less than 205 pounds, like it's not going to really go well for you in the NFL because the guys are so strong. You can get pulled down pretty easily. And Jaden's sack to pressure ratio is very high. He's taken a lot of sacks. At LSU. Like you were a big quarterback who didn't necessarily have that problem in the way that he might have that problem. How does size wind up manifesting itself in the NFL as a guy who played the position?
Well, I'm talking about that's a key point. It's definitely a key element. You think about, how some of the guys that play a long time and didn't get wasn't injury prone a lot. Those bigger statue guys that can, they love the weight room. I used to always hit the weight room as hard as I could, and everything. And I think a lot of guys, like when you think about Jaden Daniels, like I said, he is going to be in a conference where they hit you. Philly has a good defense. Giants has a good defense. Dallas has a good defense. So for those division games, you're going to play against some really good defense. And then you look at the rest of the NFC, when you think about the 49ers and you think about, someone like a Minnesota Vikings that, can have a pretty good defense and at times, and Chicago, who's known for defense before. So you got a lot of teams on that side of the conference that play solid defense. So, for Jaden, it's going to be about when he does start to put on weight, which they will put on some weight on him, how much of his elusiveness will he lose? And I don't think he loses much in the beginning. Like say, you look at Lamar, what he's done at Baltimore, even though he's gained some weight. Only thing that you've seen Lamar do a little bit more of late is try to take care of his body better by taking some of these unnecessary hits. And I know in the AFC Championship game, they probably wish he would have ran more, because that's what kind of got him that contract, with his elusiveness and his ability to get better as a passer. I think when you think of Jaden, he will need to gain some more weight. That's evident. And because you talk about the long season, they're even talking about expanding this thing to an 18-game season. So it's going to be even more prevalent for him that he probably gets a chef, someone that's going to cook him healthy meals and take care of his body so that he can have longevity because of his injury-prone factor of him not weighing much.
Last thing for you, Jason, because the one other thing that I have questions on, I wish we had more time to talk about some of these other guys too, and maybe we'll have you back here in the next couple of weeks in between naps for the little one. But Jaden is 23. He's an older quarterback. Bo Nix, same thing, older quarterback going into this draft. You were actually 25 your rookie year. So I would just ask you open-ended here, like, how did being an old – What was just laughing at me bringing up that fact?
Yeah, I was 23. 23.
Oh, well, then what happened? Then we got to fix your Pro Football Reference page.
They got to say, I was 23 because I played my Sugar Bowl. I just turned 23 when I played the Sugar Bowl, my last game in college. Yeah.
Well, we'll get on the phone with the Pro Football Reference people for making me look like an idiot. But it's still 23 is not 21 like Drake May is. So I just ask you open-ended, like, how did being a little bit of an older player affect your career? Whether that was positive, negative, neutral, like how does that factor in your opinion now, looking at it as an analyst, into a guy like Jaden or a guy like Bo Nix?
No, it definitely helps, no doubt, to be 23. I think when I came in, man, I honestly wish I could have played my first year. Just because, you're riding off a good college career and then all of a sudden you're used to playing and used to being out there playing. But, I understood I had to sit for a little bit and I had to wait basically to my second year before I started playing. I got the opportunity to play. And at that time, when I got the chance to play, the season was pretty much over as far as looks like having any relevance of what we were playing for. And so you're kind of like, you go from running a scout team to all of a sudden starting instead of getting those reps in OTAs and training camp and mini camps as the starter, which is important. I think that's the difference. If you're going to come in with a young guy like a Drake May who has a huge upside, if you do have a veteran guy there and you think like, okay, we're going to start this kid week 1, we're going to get him like week 6, it's still important that you get him team 1 reps. Whether you can start him or not start him, you have to get him reps with the starters in mini camps and in training camps as if he is a starter, while your veteran guy, he's going to get some of those reps as well, but you want to prepare him. So if this guy's going to be your future, you kind of don't want him just running scout team a whole lot, and everything. And then all of a sudden, okay, it's time to play, but you really had no nucleus or no charisma with the guys that's been in there because you basically been doing stuff totally different, for the last, months or year and a half. And so I think it's very important that, Drake May does have some good upside, but if they're going to draft him and everything, first you need to put a wall in front of him. You have to get a strong offensive line, so you have to hit some guys in the free agency as well as hit some guys in the draft from that standpoint to make sure he's not getting pounded. so much early in his career. So that way that he like you said, his best ability is availability.
For sure.
So that way he can be available when his time is needed because he's not taking too many hits and you're building that confidence in him. So it's definitely important. But as a 23-year-old or 24, 25-year-old, it's important because you've been around the game a lot more. You have more snaps. I'm going to give you an example. You remember Trubisky when he came out of North Carolina?
For sure. Yeah.
He had like 14 starts.
Yeah, not great.
Right. You had like Deshaun Watson, who had been two national championships. You had
Pat was in that draft.
Yeah,
who had
Pat Mahomes
played a ton at Tech.
Yeah, played a ton at Tech, threw for a crazy amount of yards and everything.
Yeah.
But then they went with the guy they felt like had upside, but he only started 14 games. You know what I'm saying? Like, but here are two guys that's been proven winners, proven you have a lot more film to take them off of. And you pass on those guys to pass on the guy with 14 starts, and then you already see what happened with that situation. So you have to be very careful. You can't pass up on experience, man, taking a gamble sometimes on just saying, oh, the upside looks good. No, you got to start judging the film based on what it looks like from a long period of tape that you put on.
No, that's a great point, and that's what's complicating, I think, some of these evaluations. Even a guy like May's got 2 years, not just the one, but the 2 years look very different. So what do you make of them? That's why those scouts get paid a lot of money and why I sit here and talk on the radio. Jason Campbell with us here on the Hoffman Show. JC, this was great, man. We'll definitely love to have you back soon. Congratulations again on fatherhood, and enjoy these first couple of weeks with your little one.
Yeah, definitely, man. Appreciate it, Greg. Enjoyed it as always. Like I said, look forward to being back on as we get closer to the draft.
For sure.
And everything. But, yeah, Washington has a lot of cap and a lot of opportunity this year, man. So see what happens.
No doubt. And we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much, man. That is Jason Campbell with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, I want to return to that first part of our conversation about veteran quarterbacks in the room. 301-230-0980. Tannehill. Baker Mayfield. Obviously, we talked about Kirk and Russell Wilson. But are there any of these quarterbacks, Tyrod Taylor, Gardner Minshew, Jacoby Brissett coming back, that you are interested in having mentor your choice for the number 2 pick, and really their choice for the number 2 pick next year? 301-230-0980. Talking about it next. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We talked to Dave Johnson about the Zardos coming up in about 10 minutes, but right now on the phones with you at 301-230-0980. Do you think the Commanders need to sign a veteran quarterback to pair with whoever they ultimately take in the NFL draft, and is there one that you prefer? 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's get started with Scott. Scott, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me on the show.
You got it.
I really think Jacoby Brissett could be the answer. So he's on the team still, and
well, he's
and
not.
he
You have to
played
re-sign
great
him.
when
Just
he got his-
quick point of clarification. He's a free agent, so that's not to say that you couldn't bring him back or you shouldn't bring him back. But it's not like you have incumbency there.
Oh, that's true. You're right about that. But he played great when he got in, and he's quality quarterback that played great for Cleveland when he was there. And even if you at number 2 get a quality, rookie, he can help. He can help with that in the room. I mean, maybe start a couple of games. What do you think?
I mean, I think he's my number one guy that I would have in that that list. Like I like Ryan Tannehill as a potential guy. I like Jacoby Brissett as a guy. I like Tyrod Taylor as a guy. If it's May, I like Tannehill over Tyrod. If it's Daniels, I like Tyrod as a guy who's got experience like really running as a threat. Like Tannehill's mobile in the way that May is mobile. Tyrod can run in the way that Jaden can run, and I like Jacoby for either of them because I think Jacoby of those quarterbacks is the best quarterback, and I do think that there is power. I say there's no incumbency. There isn't in terms of contract, but in some way it's like incumbency. Just because you are the guy currently in the seat doesn't mean that you, it means you know how to do the things being there. It doesn't mean that you necessarily are entitled to it again. So there's no contractual rights, but he has played with Terry McLaurin. He has played with Jahan Dotson. There is a chemistry that is super valuable with not just those receivers, but other guys on the team. Now it's a new system, but I think that Jacoby could certainly be the best option on the board. Daryl's got an interesting thought here. Daryl, go ahead. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Yeah, so I was hearing Kevin Sheehan talking about today about Sam Darnold. I would prefer having Sam Darnold and Jaden Daniels and Sam House. So, like, Sam Darnold can start and then teach Daniel how the NFL works and so.
Yeah, I mean, I think Darnold's a really interesting guy, and because he was in San Francisco last year, how he is behind the scenes, how he is as a backup, as a helper, as all the things you want a backup to do. Adam Peters is going to have knowledge of that because he was there with Peters. That said, I don't know that Sam Darnold has had enough NFL success that I'm excited about him being the guy teaching my younger quarterback. But Darnold's intriguing to me because I do think Darnold kind of understands at this point that, he would be a prime candidate for the I'll use you, you use me thing. Hey, I went to San Francisco. I learned a lot. I now am excited to go somewhere else, apply what I learned for as long as I can, and make a case that next year in free agency, someone should sign me to compete for a starting job, as opposed to a guy like Brissett, who's kind of in his last, chances to get games. And, is he really going to convince someone that next year when he's 32 or the year after when he's 33, that he should be their multi-year starter? Darnold's potentially still trying to get that, but on a one-year deal could be really interesting. Let's go to Martin. Martin, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Hoff?
What's up, bro?
Man, I can't call it. I lost the number. But listen, man, honestly, I wouldn't even get a free agent quarterback. I would rather just draft who we're going to draft and rock with Sam Howell. Because, I mean, if we think about it, if we don't put any money into a line, anybody we put back there is going to look like garbage. You see what I'm saying? So, even if you take Sam Howell and add a little protection, the sacks significantly drop. The interceptions significantly drop. and I think we add more touchdowns onto that too.
I mean,
But,
sure,
let
that's
me know
all
what you
true,
think.
Martin. But my question would be like, is Sam the guy that's going to help the number 2 pick? And if that's not the case, then like you're not really just talking about a guy who can play. Because I agree with you, like Sam Howell with a better offensive line, with all these things, can play the quarterback position at an okay level, at a passable, serviceable level to get you to the point that Drake May, let's say, is ready to play. But is he the guy that's going to help mentor that guy? And I don't think he is, because he doesn't have enough experience. He needs that mentor still, which is why Jacoby wasn't traded at the deadline last year in the first place, which was probably a silly thing that the last regime did.
Right. So if I had to choose, it would only be a space for like Joe Flacco.
Flacco would be a great
like
one.
that. Somebody who's seen it. Somebody who's seen it and done it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
100%. And that's why, like, a guy like Darnold, thanks, Martin, and hope that whatever's beeping is not a bomb about to go off for you. I think that, that's why, like, Darnold is not that intriguing. Like, Sam Darnold's intriguing for someone, but I don't know that Sam Darnold's intriguing for Washington if you're going a guy at number 2. And, like, I had someone in the YouTube chat earlier saying, like, I don't really, like, why are you signing a quarterback? Just take someone at 2. And it's like, the point is you do both. The point is to get the most out of the guy that you draft at 2, you need to have a floor underneath him of a quarterback who can play if he's not ready and someone who can show him the ropes. And Anthony, which bite was it that we had from Jason Campbell talking about how valuable it is to have a teammate as a veteran quarterback? Do we have a bite from our hit with JC in the last segment?
I saved it on the wrong, what's the name?
The wrong day? Which day did you save it on? Yesterday?
No, I didn't say. I saved it on the wrong audition thing.
All right, you figure out where it is. Here's what I'm going to play instead. Adam Peters was actually asked at the NFL Combine at his press conference, does he think that Washington needs a veteran quarterback on top of the likelihood that they draft one at the top of this draft?
As it pertains to quarterbacks or any meeting room, you want to have the best competition and as many good players as you can to have the best team. Talking about San Francisco a couple years ago, we needed, 4, Jennifer? Maybe 5 at the end. And so you need a lot. A lot of stuff can happen. So I think you always want to make every single meeting room as strong as it possibly can be, whether it's quarterback or defensive end.
And I think that's true. But what he's belying there is, like, in order to have the strongest meeting room possible, you need a veteran quarterback who has the know-how, who has been there and done that, to ultimately guide the young guy, which is why I'm an advocate for trading Sam Howell if that opportunity arises, or keeping all 3 in the room, number 2 pick, Sam and a vet, but you got to get one. And I would say Jacoby is the top line guy. And also your price tag matters, because if you can get Tannehill for $5 million and Jacoby costs you 10, I'd rather have Tannehill at 5 and $5 million to spend somewhere else. But that's kind of where I see it is I need a guy who can start games for me immediately. I need a guy who brings a veteran presence to the room. And I need, as Jason Campbell talked about in the last segment, someone who is on the same page with the development plan, that when that young guy is ready, he's not going to get in his feelings that he gets replaced. It's the Hoffman Show. It's the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube. We are your home for Washington Wizards basketball, and Dave Johnson, the voice of the Wizards, joins us on a Wizards game day next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 on the Odyssey app, and of course on the Team 980 tonight. Wizards are playing basketball. They are trying to avoid history. Sometimes you try to make it, sometimes you try to avoid it. Tonight's an avoid night. Let's talk about it with the voice of the Wizards, Dave Johnson.
Time to get the radio party started.
Blocked by Malone, Koulibaly. Oh boy, did he stuff him. Left wing pool, it's there. Oh, that's a pool party. Near the basket, slam right there. And there's a steal and the slam. You better go off. Intercepted by Kispert. Kispert now, foul line. Oh, slam. Ooh, that'll jar your preserves.
It's time for Dave Johnson on a Wizards game day.
Kuzma for three. Oh, it's there. It's there. Big shot.
On the Hoffman Show.
All right, Dave. Last time we spoke, we were hoping that a win in Utah would come. It ultimately did not. You got a big night from Jordan Poole, which was nice, but it just seems like they can't put it all together. What's it going to take tonight, and kind of what's Brian Keefe been saying of how this Wizards team can ultimately not just have Denny Avdia have a good night here and Jordan Poole have a good night there, but get everybody on the same page all at once.
Well, and there was a lot of focus for me, and as we had the broadcast against the Utah Jazz, you think about the game against the Utah Jazz, they built a 14-point lead. They had a big advantage in fast break points. There were a lot of indicators that they were going to win that game Monday against Utah Jazz. Indicators. And yeah, if you're listening or you're watching, you had to feel pretty good until that fourth quarter, when things did seem to stagnate and it went at a slower pace, and the Wizards really never could get ignited to the pace that they wanted. But that's probably oversimplifying it, because in general, especially late in fourth quarters of games, it's hard unless you're getting steals, which the Wizards have been good at, and deflections. But things tighten up in the last couple of minutes of games, and that turned out to be a 12-point loss. But it really wasn't a 12-point game. So, it's another learning process where this team, if you throw out Denver and Oklahoma City in that game against the Clippers, and I know I just, listed three games, and I was starting to say, well, if you throw out this and that and this and that, there would be a pretty good team. But no, what I'm getting at is there have been a lot of games against quality opponents over the last month. Boston, New Orleans, Dallas, as we've talked about. And they, the final step is learning how to close out games, but that also means, details at other points of the game. So, in answer to your question, it's not a simple answer. It's a learning process that's not there with this team yet. And I think Jordan Poole talked about it in postgame that, he or Tyus and Kyle have been in these kind of situations, but it's still a learning process for the other players as a team. It's not, again, everyone on this team has been a winner, has been in close games, but can you be a part of the solution collectively to close out games? And obviously that's not happened enough. But again, if you're frustrated as they are, because they bust their butt. I think about Sunday in practice. We were practicing at UCLA. They worked so hard, and they came out Monday, and you felt that hard work transfer from practice to game, but ultimately it doesn't transfer into a win. But this is where we are right now as a team. But as I look at this Orlando Magic team that we're playing tonight, that's won 9 of 11 games, it really should be more talked about in the NBA right now. Just 2 years ago, they were a 22-win team. I reference that, again, that doesn't mean as a 9-win team we're guaranteed in 3 years to be a winning team, but you can be if you make the right moves via the draft and via free agency. But, collectively they're also experimenting a little bit, and some of it's working. Jordan Poole coming off the bench, 6 games off the bench, he's averaging over 22 points a game and, over 4 assists. So, that's positive, and you hope tonight is the night that they break through and get a little joy for all that hard work.
No doubt about it. One of the areas where they've really struggled all season long, but especially lately, is rebounding. And we talked about it when it was just Gafford as the only big, really, and Muscala was kind of filling some minutes, but they just don't have big man depth, and they had it for like 2 weeks, and with Bagley healthy and Gafford healthy, and then they traded Gafford, and now they're just back to Marvin Bagley again, and they're trying to make some other guys that are probably more fours work at 5. But we've seen Denny Advia step up as a rebounder, Kyle at times. Do you think that is a key to try to get more consistent rebounding? And who are some of the guys that need to step up if they want to turn this corner? Because we can talk about all the improvements, Dave, but when you lost 15 in a row, it's time to win one.
Yeah, well, look, it's got to be everything. It's got to be rebounding. Now tonight, Marvin Bagley's not going to play. That's, he has played very well.
That is not a good start for my theory here.
No, it's not a good start for your theory. But, Eugene Omoruyi didn't get an NBA contract because of charity. He's earned what he's done, and so he's going to get looks. Jared Butler, who had something like 5 points and 8 assists in like 10 minutes the other night. I get it. It was the fourth quarter against the Clippers, but again, you can do the math. That's still impressive. So I'm throwing out these numbers. It's going to be this team goes in every night, typically with the other team on paper is better. That is a fact. So there's not a magic potion answer. The Orlando Magic right now are a better team than the Washington Wizards, period. So that means the answer to your question is everyone. It's got to be collective rebounding. When the Wizards have had wins, and there's only been 9 of them, I understand that, but they bust through their skin in every category. They're not fluke victories. I don't care if it's even against the last 2 wins, obviously against Detroit and San Antonio. You're going up against teams more evenly matched record-wise, but it was no easy trick to beat Victor Wembanyama and Greg Popovich and the whole San Antonio Spurs on the road, which the Wizards did after losing to San Antonio at home. So, because the players know it. None of these guys are used to this amount of losing, nor do they accept it. And see, that to me is the difference. As I talked about before, I've been around teams where you thought, wow, this group is going nowhere and needs to be blown up. The blown up process, if you will, or the change has already happened, but change is painful. I look at what Boston. I know they lost to Cleveland last night, but we understood the theory of why at the time Tommy Shepard went for Kristaps Porzingis, and you have a healthy Porzingis and a Beal and Kuzma, but that's history. And so the decision was made. We were not going to get any more down the road from that group. So let's bottom out, which is we knew this going in, and now you get to the end of the season, you learn some more things. You learn that you look forward to next season with a full season of Marvin Bagley, for example. What is Bilal Coulibaly going to look like in a 20-year-old body? And I know that's only 1 year, but that's a big year after the challenges he's faced in his NBA rookie season. There's no sexy whipped cream answers here. It's and if you talk to people in the Orlandos or Oklahoma Cities, when you're going through 20-win seasons, it ain't fun. It ain't fun, and there's not, if we do X, Y, and Z, we're definitely going to beat Orlando. They're going to have to play awfully well tonight on both ends of the floor. That's not a headline flash, but that's the reality. And as I've said before, they're getting more three-point attempts and makes up, and that's helping them be more competitive because as constructed, this is still not a great rebounding team. So that means you have to win in a category like three-point shooting, in my estimation, and the Wizards do have some firepower to have success in that area.
No doubt. Take notes. Make shots that count more points than the other shots. That's good math, Dave, right there. Let's make some threes tonight. Let's get Kispert back on. Let's get Kuz back on. Denny 0 for 4 against Utah. Hopefully knocks a couple down tonight. Dave and Glenn getting ready to get going over at Capital One Arena. Dave, thank you, sir. We will talk again on Friday, hopefully talking about a win and not a 16th straight loss.
Well, they're in every game, and they fight. I get it. It's still not a win. but I think fans appreciate that. And as we talk to people in the Michelob Ultra postgame show here at Capital One Arena, they can tell the difference. And I can tell the difference. And again, by the way, Chris Wright is with me tonight instead of Glenn, as Glenn will be on the television side. But Chris Wright,
superstar.
Former Georgetown star, and looking forward to having him with us tonight, and we'll have some fun.
Well, there you go. Enjoy listening to that, and we'll see if Glenn's off being a TV star. Look at him. Too good for us on the radio. Dave, thank you, sir. Have a great broadcast.
All right, you as well. Thanks.
That is Dave Johnson as we wrap up our broadcast here on The Hoffman Show. Real things, real people said into real microphones, and a preview of tomorrow's show and probably some nonsense are all next. Wrapping up here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Wrapping up on this, it's a Wednesday, right, Anthony? Today's Wednesday.
is actually the day after Tuesday and the day that comes 2 days after Monday.
The one that's before Thursday?
No, the one 2 days before Friday.
Yeah, that should have been yes, 2 days before Friday.
Yes.
You said no.
Oh.
2 days before Friday. It's definitely the day before Thursday.
Yes, it is.
What's coming up on tomorrow's show?
We have nothing.
That's not true.
I'm joking.
You forgot. You forgot we have new Thursday staples.
Oh, we are going to do Mock the Mock.
We have Mock the Mock. So we'll take a look at some of the latest mock drafts and break them down and potentially make fun of them. We also have our NBA Power Rankings, which we haven't done since our initial ones, which were like before the All-Star break, because I haven't been in on a Thursday. We've been on like Radio Row somewhere every Thursday since, basically.
Uh-huh.
So we got that.
There's going to be some shakeups too, I know.
In the Power Rankings?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Are we going to be talking about a Wizards win? Are the Wizards going to win tonight?
I think we'll be talking about the Wizards regardless, because if they lose, then they'll tie the 2009-2010 Wizards. If they win...
The Wizards Daily Wizards, if you know, you know.
If they win, then I think that's also deserving of something to talk about because they finally snapped this streak.
Honestly, if the Wizards lose tonight, I think we should try to get Ryan Russillo tomorrow. The reason being, when I was, and maybe this is like a me thing, not a here thing, but like I used to listen to him and Van Pelt, and they would do this segment where those Wizards were the Andre Blatch, etc. Wizards, and so they would do a segment when they were doing all their tomfoolery called Wizards Daily, where they just checked in on the insane things that the Wizards were doing on a nightly basis with Nick Young and Andre Blatch and JaVale McGee being knuckleheads, on the floor style knuckleheads. And then you had the obviously more serious Gilbert Arenas, Javaris Crittenden knuckleheadedness. Different category. But I feel like in honor of that, I should reach out to Russillo and be like, yo, do you want to come on and talk about the worst team in basketball? Because if they lose 16 straight, they could be like record-wise right now, the Wizards are actually giving the Pistons a run for their money. Where are we at? I haven't checked in like 2 days. I think they have sunk. Yeah, they're tied. The Wizards and the Pistons. Remember, the Pistons lost, what was it, 18 straight earlier this year?
I think it was more than that.
It might have been. It might have been like 22.
It was like 20-something.
No, it was like 28, I think.
26, 28? Let me check.
Something in there, right? And by the way, the Pistons have lost 9 of 10 and 3 straight. And the Washington Wizards are tied with them because they have lost like 27 of 30 games. I'm actually going to do this. Hold on.
It was 27 games they had lost. 27 straight.
Washington Wizards Pro Basketball Reference. Yes, I do, believe it or not, Pro Basketball Reference want the 2023-2024 Washington Wizards schedule and results. Hold on to your butts, boys and girls. We're diving into the deep end. So they have lost 15 straight. We would like to go all the way back to, basically there. Okay, so they won against Brooklyn on Friday, December 29th. They lost to Atlanta 2 nights later. So since the Atlanta game on New Year's Eve 2023, heading into 2024, they have lost 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's 6 of 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So it's 12 of 13. And then they won 2 in a row. I say 12 of 13. So then 12 of 14. So that's 3 wins in 14 games. Yeah, if they lose tonight, they will be 3-27 in their last 30. 3-27.
It's getting ridiculous, Craig.
I know they're bad, but I did find it genuinely hilarious that there was a quote in a recent story that said, even Winger and Dawkins didn't think it would be this bad. Yeah, no bleeping kidding. I think it's going to be that bad. I think they lose tonight. Orlando's hot. Washington is not. Now, Friday, the Hornets are in town. So we could go streak busting on Friday.
I hope so.
But with a good team that's playing, or a decent team that's playing well coming in, and no Bagley tonight, hopes are not high, sir. Hopes are not high. So we'll probably wind up talking about that tomorrow. I'm also talking to Yates after the show, just because we're friends and like we're due for a catch up. But I'll see if he wants to come on tomorrow.
All right.
Anything else that we need to let the people know we're working on?
I don't think so.
I hope they're working on the hot water. So if you're watching on YouTube, you see I'm drinking out of an Entercom, which is our old. God, this mug is old enough that it goes back to our previous name because we're Odyssey now. Doot, an Odyssey station. We used to be Entercom. That was our old name. And we have this sustainability initiative called One Thing, and they got us a bunch of mugs that we can reuse here in the office, and people wash them, and you do your dishes, and then you don't wind up using a bunch of paper and plastic. But unfortunately right now, there is a gigantic mess where the hot water is supposed to be. So I grabbed a mug, and I was like, oh, no water there, no water there. Went over to the coffee maker, they let me have water, but that water was not hot. So because my throat sounds terrible, I was like, hot water is the solution, and I'm drinking instead. Not even lukewarm. Room temperature water.
Ain't nothing wrong with it.
H2OE, as the kids say. No, they don't. Here's what other people said into microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Anthony, can you give me the time cue one more time, actually? Because you, what it says on the screen is different than what you gave me. Did my screen not update? Or did you do bad math?
What does your screen say?
My screen used to say 40. Well, now it says 37:59.
That is really
obviously
wrong.
Not correct. It had said 42:18 was the out time.
That was
earlier.
close.
But it's 42:20, huh?
No, it's 42:30.
42:30.
Yes.
Okay. That means I have slightly less than 3 minutes left in the show.
Yes, sir.
What's going on? I mean, clearly the screen's working because the Real Things thing is playing, and I played that. We're doing wacky bits here, kids. We're not even doing bits. We're just trying to figure out how we're still on the air. But you know what? We'll take it. We'll take this miracle. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we're still going until they fire us because this segment's a dumpster fire. All right, Real Things. Brooklyn Nets players asked by their social media team, what is the last movie they watched?
What was the last movie you watched?
Law-abiding citizen.
Wall Street, Dark Knight, Negotiator. I watch a lot of movies. So.
I forget the name of it. Fantastic Four. Friday. Oh, what's that movie about Tyler Perry? It just came out on Netflix.
Mia Khalifa on Netflix. Jason Statham on Beekeeper.
Anthony, what's the last movie you watched?
I literally just watched one that I hadn't seen in a long time. Or I don't really even think I've watched the movie in its entirety. The Hot Chick.
I don't think I've seen that one in its entirety for sure.
Adam Sandler's in it, and one of his best friends, Rob Schneider.
Yeah, actually, no. I was thinking of a different movie. Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
Oh,
which is not surprising.
It is hilarious.
I haven't seen any movie. The last movie I actually watched was... I'm trying to think if we watched any documentaries since we did this like a month ago. But actually, it was this point longer than that because it was when Rachel was sick. We were like, we can't go anywhere. Let's do it. Fired up Oppenheimer.
Ooh.
All 3 hours of it.
Oh, my gosh. How was it?
Very good.
Okay.
Very good. Because it's like, it's about the making of the bomb.
Yeah.
But it's also about like this whole other storyline that I didn't even know happened later on in the chronology. And they do a really, really good job of like weaving it all together. And just like when you're fully immersed in one thing, it like whips you back to the other timeline.
Uh-huh.
So it's one of those types of deals.
Okay.
Yeah. It was good. It probably could have been 2.5 hours instead of 3. But, you know, it takes a long time to make a nuclear bomb.
Do you ever like doze off on those like super long movies?
I don't watch enough of them.
Oh, okay, that's fair. It was my first time watching King Kong. I fell asleep like throughout the movie. It was a great movie though. Like I would say it was a great movie. It just took too long. The build up, the suspense, like all of it.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I've definitely fallen asleep during movies before, but it's what it is. Zion Williamson. This is interesting. Would he do the NBA dunk contest?
I got to do my part and make the All-Star game. If I'm in the All-Star game, I'll do the dunk contest. But if I'm not doing it.
You know, I think that's fair. You get to All-Star weekend, and then we'll do it. All right, that's our show for today. Wizards up next here on the Team 980.